Hello, yes, hi, and welcome to the Dark Knight Conspiracies, episode 70. When is deception okay? Well, it's been quite a week, and before we get into the title, let's just get into tomorrow's news today. So this is like the third time I've seen this in the last 2 months. Another solar flare is going to hit and possible disruptions. And again, this all ties into the internet's going to be shut down, electricity's going to be shut down, EBS is going to go active. Look, these things are real, okay? As far as the solar flares. But the fact that they keep coming out with these warnings just tells me get ready, because at some point something's going to happen, and this is going to be the excuse they use. So the thing that's heating up is this idiot in Virginia, and both sides have lawyered up, which already tells me this is a problem. Mark Elias, anybody know him? Oh yeah, heavily tied to HRC and the Clinton Foundation, and heavily active in the Georgia voting stuff going on in Texas. This guy's all over the place. So, the latest polls are showing the Republicans up by 8 points. Hate to warn you people. You saw what happened in California. They're just going to steal this election. Don't expect any surprise here, folks. I'm just saying. And, again, I don't understand. I mean, I somewhat do, but the way this is going, nothing's going to happen with this 2020 election, at least not now. Maybe 5 or 6 years down the road it might. It's Arizona just came out. Karen Fann put out a statement, and people are all irate. She came right out and said, well, we really don't have a process for decertification. Okay, folks, they're telling you they're not going to do anything as far as 2020. Now, they might say, well, we need to do this and do that for 2022 and 2024, but they're not going to do anything for 2020. This stuff has dragged on long enough. This don't take that long. I'm sorry. And this leads into the whole deception thing. There's a game going on, and we're being gamed. I keep saying it, and I'm going to stick to it. My opinion, you can disagree or agree. I don't really care. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but this Rutgers professor, again, what of our kids being taught? And I'm going to go into this later on with a personal story that I know you don't want to hear, but really probably don't have anything to do with it, but I think there's some value there. So this article again is, they're basically telling you there's gonna be another election steal, and ain't nothing's gonna be done to stop it. We have it all, right? Why ain't they stopping this stuff? I don't know. Fairfax County. Now, little history on Virginia. And this is the same with a lot of states. Like Pennsylvania, these big states where they have a lot of counties. Fairfax is the one that decides the Virginia election. It doesn't matter what happens in the other counties. It comes down to Fairfax, and they're not requiring Social Security numbers on absentee ballots. Go figure. And I'll just move this one over. Now, this came out this week. And this is another example of kicking the can down the road. So a claim in Wisconsin was made to the election officials. They kicked it to the DA. The DA kicked it to the sheriffs because nobody wanted to investigate this. Well, the sheriffs come out and did a press conference this week that there's some serious issues with nursing home voting. And that children of the parents in those nursing homes signed affidavits stating that their parents weren't cognitive enough to vote. And because of the pandemic, normally voting people would come in and assist these people, but they couldn't do it because of the shutdowns. So it's just the people in the nursing home help these people fill out their ballots. And again, this was scathing in my opinion. But again, you know what? Nothing's gonna get done. This is how corrupt all this stuff is. Oh, and look who popped into the news this week. Isn't this wild? This leaks that he's going to be arrested next week. Now, you know there's not going to be no perp walk. And this count that he's being charged with carries a maximum of 1 year. For a guy like Andrew Cuomo, you really think he's going to see 1 year? No. My opinion, distraction. Distraction story. But I have another theory on this because the AG is being accused of a hit job against him because she announced her run for governor. Now, I'm going to tie this into a couple of things. Why is he being attacked for this all of a sudden? Is it possible? Could it just be possible that the reason he's being attacked is because he flipped? And they know it? And this is why they're going after him? I know it's out there because, quite frankly, if that was the case, he'd be looking at a larger sentence. Or is this just a way of distracting from the whole nursing home thing? Oh, by the way, there was voter fraud in nursing homes. Seems to me there's some dots to connect there with nursing homes. So that's all the articles I've got. And now I'm going to get into the whole deception thing. When is deception okay? Well, from a people standpoint, and we dealt with this as, teenagers and as adults. And I'll just use the example of cheating on somebody. If you know your best friend's wife or your wife's best friend's husband is cheating on them and you know it, we all know how this happens. If you come forward and tell the person, they're not going to believe you and you get castrated and thrown to the curb. because you're jealous or you're this or you're that. So some would say deception is okay in that point. You know, it's not your business. You butt out. But then when the truth comes out and the other person finds out you knew about it, all of a sudden that person's get mad because you didn't tell them about it. So it's a no-win situation if you're in that seat. Well, here's where we're at. We all know we've been deceived for centuries. And we continue to be deceived. And I'll just use the 17 board as an example. There was a post about disinformation is necessary. Well, isn't disinformation deception? Because that's what the other side is doing too. So how are we to distinguish what got posted is information or disinformation? You can't, unless you spend the time to research it, and quite frankly, there are some people out there that do have the time to get into the rabbit holes. You know, and the biggest deception I'm going to bring up is Roswell. At this point in juncture, I think we all have somewhat of an opinion that there is some truth to UFOs. And that's really where the major deception started and got people going. And at what point are you going to trust the people? Because all we hear is, well, there's not enough people on board, not enough people are woke. We're 5 years into this. And I keep saying, if you're not awoke now, you're not going to be. You know, there is a law in this country that if there's a declaration of war or we're at war with another country, that needs to be made public. We've yet to hear it. All the evidence points to our elections were interfered with from foreign countries, which means multiple countries, not just one. And if you interfere in another country's elections, that's considered a declaration of war. But yet, it hasn't been announced to the people. It hasn't been voted on by Congress, from what I know. Unless we keep hearing about the invisible enemy. Is that what, well, I'm not even going to say is that what the war is all about. No, this is what the war is all about. And the invisible enemy is Satan because, quite frankly, he is invisible. Just like to some people, God is invisible. This is a spiritual war. You can't come out as a nation and say, I'm declaring war on the heavens. You'll be laughed out of your position. So that could be one reason for it. But my whole premise is, at some point, you got to tell the people what's really going on. Unless God is guiding all this. And if that's the case, then I'm not going to question it. But there's no doubt deception's going on both sides. And this is my whole point. When is it okay? You know, the good side is going to say, well, we had to do this for the benefit of your own good. How many times have we heard that? At what point are we going to be trusted to make a decision? At the rate we're going, I'm going to say we're never going to be trusted. Because you got a few select people up there making the decisions for us. As far as what's good for us, what's not good for us. And if it's God doing it, I'm not going to question it. I'll trust his judgment. But these political leaders, I'm not going to trust their judgment. No siree, I'm not going to trust anybody. You got... Monday's going to be interesting because New York mandates went in. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with this whole... Articles are out there about fire departments shutting down. Police are going to be scaled down now. It's already crazy over there. This is going to be a free-for-all. So let's keep an eye on that. So now I'm going to get into the personal side of the story. If not that you'll be interested in this, but you know, I got my own personal experiences. You know, what I think these times, why these times are interesting is I'm a baby boomer, and it's the baby boomers that are primarily, not all, but primarily doing all this stuff, you know, with the school boards and everything else. Not everybody, but we were the first generation to think outside the box and develop critical thinking. Now, what I mean by that is, you know, the conversations I have with my mother, and she always has the same answer. Well, this is what we were taught. This is what we were taught. So, programming was going on back in the 30s and 40s. We were the generation that broke away from that because, you know, we said, well, we're not going to raise our kids like our parents raised us or their grandparents raised them. You know, there was a, I don't want to say tradition, but that's how it was. You know, my parents used to say the same thing. Well, that's the way we were raised. That's the way we were raised. Well, I can say the same thing, but I can also disagree with it. There's the difference. The baby boomers were the first generation to disagree with how they were raised. And I think that's why you see a lot of the activism you see now. Now here's the story I'm going to tell to end this show. You know, when I was a teenager in high school, it started with football. A group of us used to get together and religiously play football. Every Saturday we would meet up at the high school field. And all different types of kids. Like, we had our share of 98-pound weaklings in the group. We had our share of, oh my God, that guy's too tough for me. All these people were included in these groups, and 20 of us used to get together religiously every Saturday. And I remember the one year we did this straight through September to March. Didn't matter the weather. We played every Saturday, 20 of us. A foot of snow, ice, rain, sleet. And we would play till dark. And this was full tackle. No pads. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, fractured ribs, pulled hamstrings, everybody suffered injuries, but we were there every Saturday playing regardless of the injuries. And some would say, well, that's pretty stupid playing with full tackle with fractured ribs, but we were teenagers. We were fearless. And also there were people on my team, the opposite team. People didn't like each other. But you know what? We formed together. And I can tell you, I played organized hockey, I played organized baseball. That experience was so beneficial in my professional life. The lessons that were learned. And that's why it's so important, and it's so tragic what they've done to sports now. But I digress. And we would have our fist fights on the field. And then get back. Okay, next set of downs. Everything was forgotten. And then it got to a point where other kids would form teams in the neighborhood, and we would challenge each other to games, and we would play keg games. We were teenagers, right? And the losing team had to pay for the keg, and we'd have a party. Looking back, it's amazing how the respect, despite the hatred we might have had on the field, the respect we had for each other, that we left everything on the field and could get together, have a few ginger ales, and have a good time. Nowadays, some people would say, you're asking for trouble. And I would agree with them. Because this is where our society is gone. We can't leave it on the field. We got to take it to the next field and the field after that. This is what went wrong with this country. And last, I'll leave with the baseball story. It was the same thing. The age groups at the time ranged from 17 to 22-year-olds. We'd meet at the local sandlot, and some of us had jobs. Some of us were still in school. 5 o'clock every day through the summer, 5 days a week. Met at the baseball field, and we would play. I think it was hardball, but it wasn't fast pitch. It was soft pitch, as we called it. Again, 16 kids getting on a baseball field and playing till sundown. I mean, it kept us off the streets. It kept us from doing stupid stuff. And the group I hung around with, like any group, a lot of razzing, a lot of bullying, if you want to call it that. But we had thick skins. You know, this was another thing, going back to the football. This toughened us up. This taught us to be men. Especially the 98-pound weaklings. They were out there tackling people twice their weight. And you developed a tough skin. This is what made us men. This is what is lost with today's kids and teenagers. That toughness, that spirit. So we would play these baseball games, and the same thing. We would have the keg games, other kids. So one time, we had we called it our World Series event, and we went to a neighborhood. This was actually a legitimate Major League Baseball field. You know, the fences were, they were about 325, 380 in center field. And I mean, it was a legitimate field. And this is where we wanted to have our game. And we had a kid in the neighborhood, and I'll just say, using correct terms, he was a special needs kid. But he always carried his trombone around with him. And we would see him in the neighborhood corners just playing his trombone. Sitting out there just playing the trombone. And I'm telling you, that guy could play it like nobody else. He was fantastic. So we decided to friend him and bring him to this game. And that he would play the national anthem for us before the game started. Crazy kids, right? So he played the national anthem. We all stood up, took our ball caps off, and he played it to perfection. Now, what we didn't realize is that there was a high school championship game going on the field adjacent to us. And what we weren't paying attention to is after he got done playing that national anthem, we just heard a roar and a sound of applause. And we all looked over at the adjacent field. They stopped their game in the middle of it because the national anthem was playing. That memory will stick with me till the day I die. You want to talk about patriotism? You want to talk about people that love their country? They could have kept on playing in the middle of their inning. They stopped everything. And it was a big crowd. There was probably 400 people there. Like I said, these were legitimate size baseball fields with stands to accompany people, open to the public. That moment touched my heart as a teenager so much. And that's all we talked about at the keg party afterwards. What a moment that was. Oh, by the way, my team won. Thank you very much. And also, for slow pitch, we had some guys, we could jack that ball over that fence at slow pitch. But I digress. So I'll leave it at that. we all know what this weekend is, so I won't bring it up, pagan holiday. But as always, stay safe, stay strong, stay vigilant, keep your faith, and be prepared. God bless you all. Zebra 3, take us out.